its amazing cruiserweight action, Japanese imports, and Goldberg squashes, man did World Championship Wrestling put out some total crap in its time. Terrible wrestling, terrible booking, terrible stipulations, the house that Turner built had it all, and the company's worst traits could often be seen in their pay-per-view main events. In this list, we will be showcasing some of the worst from Starrcade 1990 onwards, as that was the first show to carry the WCW moniker. For a variety of reasons, these matches actually make me a bit glad that the promotion is not around today, and I loved WCW. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 worst pay-per-view main events in WCW history. Join us! Number 10, Hulk Hogan vs. Ric Flair at Uncensored 2000. There was a time and place where Hulk Hogan taking on Ric Flair would have been considered one of the greatest pro wrestling spectacles in the world. That time was not the year 2000, and that place was not the main event of WCW's final uncensored pay-per-view. You might never have seen this match, but you've most certainly heard of it, because this is the infamous Yapai Pai Indian strap match, brother, that has become part of internet wrestling folklore thanks to shows like Botchamania. Hashtag thank you, Mafu. Flair and Hogan were tied together by a strap, with the objective of the match being to touch all four corners of the ring before the other person. I mean, at least I think that was the objective. They both tried to pin each other a couple of times for absolutely no reason. As well as forgetting its own rules, this match also reminded everyone that neither man was in their prime anymore, as they both slowly bopped each other around the arena, presumably whilst wishing they could be literally anywhere else. Chuck in a bunch of random outside interference and you have got a recipe for a classically bad WCW show closer. Number 9, Hollywood Hulk Hogan vs. Roddy Piper at Halloween Havoc 1997. Around a year after Starrcade 1996, where Roddy Piper had beaten Hollywood Hogan in a match not for the world title, the two legends would face off again in another match that was once again not for Hogan's title. Nobody ever accused Piper of being smart, did they? At Halloween Havoc 1997, Piper and Hogan battled inside a giant steel cage that definitely didn't just exist because Hell in a Cell had debuted about 3 weeks earlier. These two middle-aged men awkwardly fumbled around inside the structure as a bunch of fake stings watched on from the outside for some reason. The majority of both performers' offense boiled down to punches and kicks, which would have been acceptable 10 years earlier, but not on the same show that included Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero's revolutionary cruiserweight title encounter. To top this terrible headliner off, Randy Savage hit an insane dive off the top of the massive cage that Hogan was supposed to catch. Did he? Did he balls? Poor Macho Man's knees were never the same. Oh, and Piper won again, by the way, but he still wasn't the champion. Cool. Number 8, Team WCW vs. NWO vs. NWO Wolfpack at Fall Brawl 1998. War Games was once the jewel in WCW's crown. The brainchild of Dusty Rhodes, this mammoth two-cage fight to the death became so iconic that WWE raised it from the dead over a decade and a half after the promotion shut its doors. The final War Games match to take place on WCW pay-per-view happened at Fall Brawl 1998, and, well, there's a reason this was the last one on a major platform for nearly 20 years. Instead of two teams going at it with submission or surrender rules, now there were 3 groups involved and pinfalls were allowed, which sort of defeated the entire point of the stipulation. There was the NWO team of Hollywood Hogan, Bret Hart, and Stevie Ray. The Wolfpack team of Kevin Nash, Sting, and Lex Luger, and Team WCW of Diamond Dallas Page, Roddy Piper, and the Ultimate Warrior. This main event eventually devolved into a big sloppy mess, with Warrior only showing up right at the end to brawl with Hogan. DDP got the win for his team, but nobody cared. They were just glad that this nightmare was over. Number 7, Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman vs. Lex Luger and the Giant at Bash at the Beach 1997. Dennis Rodman, future best friend of Kim Jong-un, was with his other bestie during the main event of Bash at the Beach 1998 as he teamed with Hollywood Hulk Hogan to take on Lex Luger and the Giant. Just bloody look at that lineup. You had Rodman, a non-wrestler, Hogan, who always found a way to put in zero effort at this time, Lex Luger, a man with the mobility of a garden wall, and the Giant, who was only about 18 months into his career at this point. Honestly, I felt more excitement watching a slinky going down the stairs than watching this match, and that didn't last 22 minutes. The wrestling was slow at best and painful at worst, with enough grandstanding and hot dogging to put even the more ardent of sports entertainment fans to sleep. Honestly, Rodman was probably the best thing about this encounter. He was pretty damn athletic, pulling off some decent arm drags and leapfrogs, and the crowd were into everything he did. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough to make up for what was an agonizing main event. Hey, at least Luger got to tap out Hogan, which was a rarity. Number 6, Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman versus Diamond Dallas Page and Karl Malone at Bash at the Beach 1998. Hey, welcome back, Dennis. At the 1998 NBA Finals, which I'm told has something to do with basketball, Rodman's Chicago Bulls took on Karl Malone's Utah Jazz in one of the most famous series of matches in the sport's history. WCW attempted to capitalize on this by booking the two stars in the main event of that year's Bash at the Beach, only instead of a slam dunk, they hit the rim and sent the entire basket crashing to the floor. Malone was paired up with Diamond Dallas Page, whilst Rodzilla once again teamed with Hogan. What could have been a simple match that masked the celebrity's limited in-ring skills dragged on for an agonizing 23 minutes, stuffed with a bunch of NWO interference that it just didn't need. Sure, Malone hit a couple of nice diamond cutters, but did anybody really need to see the two non-wrestlers hog the main event for quite this long? It might have drawn some new eyes to the product, but those eyes would not have liked what they saw. Number 5, Diamond Dallas Page and Jay Leno versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff at Road Wild 1998. The main event of 1998's Road Wild, WCW's annual trip to the Sturgis Motor Rally, was another terrible tag team match, pitting Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff against Diamond Dallas Page and talk show host Jay Leno. What the hell are you doing here? Eazy-E had been making fun of Leno's show on WCW programming, which was what led to the late-night comedian teaming up with DDP to seek his revenge. In reality, Bischoff was just after more of that sweet mainstream exposure. Let's see how that went. Malone and Rodman were both professional athletes, whilst Leno had made his fortune sitting in a comfy chair. This was not the best preparation for a wrestling match, and it showed as the Tonight Show star hit some of the worst punches in wrestling history. Hogan and Page could have carried this to a passable match, but they just spent their time in the ring mouthing off. The two wrestlers eventually took each other out as Leno pinned Bischoff with his shoulders about 3 feet off the mat to bring this miserable experience to a merciful end. Number 4, Goldberg vs. Kronik at Halloween Havoc 2000. For the only match on this list not to feature Hulk Hogan, we go to the 7th to last pay-per-view WCW ever did. The main event of Halloween Havoc 2000 was supposed to be Booker T taking on Scott Steiner, but it was replaced by Goldberg taking on the tag team of Kronik because, in kayfabe, Bill needed time to heal up after being attacked beforehand. If Goldberg were to lose this battle, then he would be gone from WCW forever. High stakes then, so how did the match go? Well, Goldberg won in less than 4 minutes, pinning both Bryan Adams and Brian Clark, making them look like total chumps. After all that fannying about, after delaying the match right until the end of the show, this whole charade was over and done with in less time than it takes to go to the bathroom. So what was the point? Why was so much focus put on Goldberg losing if he was just going to win so comfortably? The fact that this baffling decision came after a night of all-round dreadful anti-entertainment certainly did not help things. Number 3, Hulk Hogan vs. The Butcher at Starrcade 1994. You can say a lot of things about Hulk Hogan, and I have, but you cannot say that he doesn't look after his friends. Yeah, we're talking about you, Ed Leslie. Wherever Hogan went, Beefcake was sure to follow and was usually on his way to a massive payday. Case in point, the main event of Starrcade 1994, where Hogan somehow managed to persuade people to let him fight beefers in the main event for the world title. As the Butcher, Leslie joined up with the three Faces of Fear and had been attacking Hogan for months leading up to the company's big end-of-year spectacle. This led to what could have been a really interesting scenario between two former best buds, had they been able to put on a half-decent match. Whilst Hogan had his limits, at least he was a star. The Butcher, on the other hand, had about 1% of the charisma of his opponents, which is being generous, and his in-ring abilities made the Hulkster look like Jushin Thunder Liger. A disgusting display of favoritism that led to a rotten match, Starrcade 1994 might just have the worst main event in that show's illustrious history. Number 2, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage versus the Alliance to End Hulkamania at Uncensored 1996. In early 1996, WCW was still trying to push Hulk Hogan as their top babyface star, but something clearly wasn't working as fan interest dwindled. So, did they attempt to get someone new over in Hogan's place? Nope, instead they decided to double down on Hogan as the hero by putting him in one of the most ridiculously one-sided matches in wrestling history. Alongside his on-again, off-again friend Randy Savage, Hogan competed in the main event of Uncensored 1996 in a Doomsday Cage match. Fought over 3 levels, Hogan and Savage could only win the match by escaping the cage and overcoming a ludicrous number of enemies. You had Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, Meng, Kevin Sullivan, the Barbarian, Z-Gangster, aka Zeus from No Holds Barred, and the Ultimate Solution, making this an 8-on-2 handicap match. And you'll never guess what, the goodies still won. If this bonkers stipulation wasn't bad enough, then the action itself was bottom-of-the-barrel stuff. The cage severely limited what the performers could do, turning what was supposed to be a highly dangerous situation into a pantomime-level farce. I mean, Hogan and Savage were hitting people with frying pans, for Christ's sake. Number 1, Hulk Hogan vs. The Giant at Halloween Havoc 1995. After their monster truck sumo match, which consisted of both men pushing each other around in giant funny-shaped cars on a rooftop, Hulk Hogan accidentally pushed the Giant off the top of Cobo Hall, presumably to his death. Never mind that though, we've got a wrestling show to get on with. Despite the fact that he had almost certainly just killed a guy, Hogan came down to the ring anyway for his title match, only for the Giant to just turn up like nothing had happened. This unexplained resurrection meant that the match could go ahead, and thank God it did, otherwise we may never have been introduced to the Yeti! A giant man wrapped in toilet paper came down to the ring to assist the future Big Show, leading to the double humping spot that this match is still famous for today. Andre's kayfabe son won the match and Hogan's title, ending one of the weirdest nights in pro wrestling history on a truly baffling note. Yes, they made bad decisions left, right, and center. Yes, they let their wrestlers get away with way too much politicking, but God bless WCW for giving us this glorious nonsense.